Hi, folks. We are GrownAGeeks, and we are here to do a season one spoiler review. We're going to do some one-on-one spoiler reviews for the Acolyte. Season one just finished the finale on Disney Plus. Joining me today, I have the Oakling Teresa. How you doing, Teresa?
I am hanging in there. How about you?
I am doing well. It has been a day, but we are going to persevere. We're going to discuss a little Acolyte. We're going to keep it short and sweet for you, though. We've got 5 points we want to discuss, and we're going to try to stick to just a review of the show. Oftentimes, when I get to talking about Star Wars, I find myself on the defense of Star Wars against the fandom, and not going to do that. Go watch our live review last night. Or the previous recording where we did a live show as soon as it was over, Jeff and I hopped on, we discussed it. You can see all my defending there. Um, no condescending tones on this show tonight. I will try. Um, I will try. But we're going to highlight just a few things. One, since we're talking about the Acolyte season one, the whole season, I'd like to kind of take a moment and focus in on some of the things that I feel like they got right. Discuss, perhaps where they missed the mark. Don't really want to say the things they did wrong, but where they missed the mark. Maybe it didn't land. I didn't feel this. I couldn't understand that sort of thing. Um, Feelings on the finale, the endings. Did they resolve all the questions you had? Since it had that whole murder mystery vibe, were you satisfied with the who done it? Um, Thoughts on, or no, highlights from the season. If there were any standout moments, I know I've got a few. And then thoughts on season two. What would you like to see in season two? Do they need a season two? Those are the 5 things that we're going to cover tonight. So let's start with what they got right. Teresa, I'll turn it over to you. What were some of the things that you thought the Acolyte did well as a Star Wars show?
Well, just in general, I feel like it was written such that, I mean, I was instantly invested. After the first show, I was waiting for the next one. And, they kind of have to do that when they're going to deal them out to you week by
Right.
week or whatever. But I feel like they did a good job of that, even up until the finale. Now, we'll go back to this when we talk about some maybe some shortcomings, but I do feel like they dragged a certain thing out. Um, and it was kind of frustrating because they would get right up to it and then, the
Yeah.
credits roll. But
Right.
other than that, I mean, they really have to, though. That a serial type show, they really have to do
Right.
that to keep you coming back. But I feel like they did a good job of getting me to come back because I was left wanting more up until the anticipation for the closing episode, and but I have some kind of opposite feelings on the closing episode, but we'll get to that later.
Okay. Okay. I think as a whole, some of the things that they got right, they brought a little fun back to Star Wars.
Hmm.
We had a staple of a Star Wars show is a cute little blank. In this case, we had the cute little droid. We had our Pip. So
Pip Droid, yep.
going back to our R2, our BB-8. When you play the video games, like there's always that cute little companion. And so, of course, there's a lot of things in the show that are going to feel familiar. But not only that, we get to see a few jokes that were funny. You know what I'm saying? Like we get to see some things that happen, and some of this is just like TV tropes. Okay, I'll go with you, but don't make me do this one thing. And then in the very next scene, you got to show them doing the one thing. So it's like, and anytime I see stuff like that, it always gets a chuckle from me. Some of the other things I think they really got right. The Somebody was definitely a fan of lightsabers,
Hmm.
and as a Jedi fanatic, like I have never pretended that Star Wars is not all about space wizards and laser swords. Like I'll be the first person to tell you that's what Star Wars is to me. That's what it's always been, and I'm starting to kind of get out of that as other things are coming around. Mandalorian, one, Andor, but there are still a lot of aspects of Star Wars beyond Jedi and Sith and the Force and lightsabers. But whoever was working on this show likes those things. And this is a show for people who likes those things, because it didn't, like, not one stormtrooper, there wasn't a bounty hunter looking for. This was everybody who had screen time felt like they were a Jedi, and so because of that, it kind of focused in on the thing that I like. So I went in very excited, and they were able to keep me there by, oh, you slipping? Okay, I'm back. And it was perfect. The fight choreography was fantastic. And the, kind of the explanation for why the choreography was the way it was, I really appreciated that, because it gave insight to something I would not have thought of otherwise. And so I definitely think giving us, and it's not just the fan service, but I would honestly say that I feel like the showrunner, Leslie Headland, has a little bit more appreciation for Star Wars than I probably would have initially given her credit for. I could definitely understand how some people would look at it the same way it's viewed by Rian Johnson and say, you can't do this to these characters. This isn't Star Wars. But if you take a moment and you just focus in on what's being said, focus in on the story, pay attention to the nuances of the characters, you come to realize that, at the end of the day, the Jedi are people. There's a lot of different races and species, so I don't want to say they're human, but at the end of the day, it's like this is humanity, if you will. These are just people, and as such, they have feelings. And the senator came in and he was like, you Jedi claim to do you claim to control the impossible. We don't claim to control the Force. No, I'm talking about your emotions. Oh, damn! You know what? And it's like you come into it, and what it did for me, it further created the need and the necessity to look at Star Wars, and I'm air quoting this again, from a certain point of view. It is so easy to look at Star Wars as Jedi good, Sith bad. They have on the black robes. They must be the bad guy. We've known that every TV show when we were kids, every cartoon growing, that's always how it is. And then at some point later, we had characters like Zorro, who wore a mask and he was a bandit and he wore all black. And it's like, wait, he's the hero? And that's where you start to kind of upset. And those changes, they start trying to challenge the status quo. This is a show that actually intentionally goes and challenges the status quo. And it gives me an appreciation to view the Jedi that I love more realistically. And I think that was the point of the show. And I think that's something they got right. The seduction and the lure of the dark side. I mean, I don't think there was a better way to explain that than what the Acolyte did. And I hope that more credit is given and it is properly acknowledged what she has done for canonizing the Sith.
But I think there are a lot of fans who are taking exactly what you called something that they got right. They're calling it a shortcoming, a failing, because I've seen fan banter on how this show just came in and ruined people's childhoods. The Jedi are supposed to be good and the Sith is supposed to be bad. And now you come in and you want to make a 100-year before prequel, and you want to, muddy the water.
Well, and the funny thing is, if anybody's watching other shows, or I'm gonna throw a line out there, at some point in the war, people forget why they're even fighting.
Especially you fight long enough.
You know what I'm saying? And if the Sith have been gone for a millennia, so let me just make sure that this makes sense. Just based on that comment, the Sith have not been seen in a millennia. So what happened to the Sith? Did they just stop being Sith? Did they just say, okay, that's it, we're out? Did they all die? If they did, how did they die? Somebody had to kill them. So after the Jedi committed Sith genocide, like after they killed all the Sith, sure, there's no more Sith. And again, there's nothing wrong with Jedi's being the good guy. They let Soul believe he was doing good till he died.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't change the actions. I'll even take it a step further and say he did not know what that dark magic power was when Mother Anase turned into the black cloud. He didn't know what she was about to do. He jumped out with a lightsaber literally to protect May.
Mm-hmm.
Literally, he did that to protect May. He truly thought what he was doing
was the right thing. Yeah.
Now, in her dying breath, she's like, you fool, I was going to let her go because that's what she wanted. And all that shows us is that his flaw was his impulsive behavior, his restlessness. And Trinity, because I cannot remember that Jedi's name, but Carrie Ann Moss's character, she has a conversation with him earlier when they're just talking about Torben. Torben's ready to get off the planet. He's restless. He wants to go. And so it's like, oh, look at him. He's restless. She's like, well, you were like that once too. He's like, well, so what, you think he's right? You should just, she's like, hey, I'm gonna let him figure it out for himself. He's got to learn. Oh, you don't think I should do that? I mean, he's like, well, that's why I have a student and you don't. Well, I could have a student if I wanted one. You know what I'm saying? It's like you get to see all of these moments where Soul shows you who he is. Never mind what he plans to do, what he wants to do, what his intentions are. We get to see who Soul is. And I think the show got right. Sometimes you can have the best of intentions, but your actions can still be flawed, even with great intentions, and it's just one of those things. And it's like he's running out here like, force sensitive CPS. Bro, you don't know what they got going on in their house. Oh, right. You just saw kids playing in the woods. Did you not see the mother tell them how dangerous it was to be in the woods? So clearly the kids were doing what they wanted to do, not what they were told. So are we now saying the children need to be removed because they broke the rules, not because they weren't being disciplined? It's, you see what I'm saying? It's like it really come down to semantics and the nuances of people and the way people respond to things. And at the end of the day, Soul is a human on top of that.
Mm-hmm.
So not only is he people, he's a human people. Mm-hmm. The Wookiee people, if he get a little upset, we get that. Wookiees are known for their tempers.
Mm-hmm.
Humans apparently are known for being dumbasses and making bad choices. And Soul just strengthened the position of people in Star Wars. So I think, and that's why I say that's something that I think the show truly got right, was showing the nuance.
Humans are dumbasses.
Basically. Because you see, it's only the humans that's messing things up out in the galaxy.
Right.
Wookiees was chilling. Ewoks was doing their thing.
See, that's what Wookiees do. Wookiees chill. That's why I relate so well to the Wookiees.
Wookiees, they just be like, you know what? I want a good meal. Let's play some games. We're going to relax. We're going to kick it.
They chill. I think I was probably the most upset. I was kind of just really hoping that Master Kalnaka would get away.
Right.
Alas, he did not.
So, yeah, but that's definitely some things that I think they got right. And I think working inside the gray area of Star Wars, tying it into the things that we are familiar with and we know. But again, just looking at it from a different perspective. And I think, challenging people's ideology when it comes to Star Wars is the only way to not give us more of the same, because fans have also been very clear. They don't want more of the same. They want something new and different, but not too new and not too different.
Right.
So, I recall when The Force Awakens came out, I was thinking like, oh, great. All new Star Wars, completely new. I was excited for it. Let's see. Let's go. Let's do it. And I remember hearing the outcry, how this is just like A New Hope. This is, shot for shot remake of A New Hope. And I'm like, so you like it then? Like, because everybody likes the original trilogy. So you liked it then, right? And it's being able to do something. And that's the beauty of it being the time that it is, because it is a prequel, because it takes place in this time long before. Let them do whatever the hell they want to do there, because it's going to come back to this.
Right. This has already happened. You know, I mean, it hasn't already happened because this is a prequel, but it's already canon. So chill.
Right. Right. And even if nothing they can do in the prequel, even if they make it canon by making it part of the current Star Wars continuity, is going to change anything that's already out. That is a clean slate. That is a big old empty ass whiteboard for them to draw and do whatever. And all that means, everything you do up until episode 1, have at it. Mm-hmm. Have at it. You can do whatever you want, so long as by episode 1, we are here.
You're right. It's got to lead up to what we already know to be happening.
And it was one of those things like, so perfect timing. This lines up with where they might have missed the mark. We'll go on to the second topic here. Some areas where they might have missed the mark. As we're talking, since they have the prequel time and they've got all this free reign to do whatever they want to do, so long as it gets us back to this point. Having the cameo of the one Jedi who the Sith haven't been seen for millennia, the big conehead guy. Having him as a cameo, I thought that was fun. I thought that was really cool. It's one of those ways to kind of tie in this connects to this. See, he was on the Jedi Council then. He's been on the Jedi Council forever. And it gives him an opportunity to have this conversation. Everyone was all up in arms. And I still can't do it because I have to this is one of those things, because it's a murder mystery show, you have to let stuff get revealed. When it was all said and done, anybody who would have known about the potential existence of a Sith is dead. So we can get to episode 1 and we can still have him say the Sith haven't been seen in a millennia, and it'd be correct. But now I got to look at Yoda. You knew. You knew. But Yoda also tried to hide from the Senate the reappearance of the Sith when they first showed back up, because he said the Sith were the only ones who knew their weakness. And if other people found out the Sith existed, greater their enemies would become. And so Yoda's not above keeping his own secrets. He always kind of been about it. It's a fitting cameo, but I also don't think we needed the Yoda cameo. That's just...
I liked it.
And my wife was like, oh, yeah, so it definitely had... I opened up with it was a fitting cameo. I'll give it that. It wasn't bad writing to put Yoda in there. It was just one of those things that I recognize a fan service moment as a fan service moment.
Exactly.
And
that was for me and Celeste.
and that's cool, but it's one of those things where it's and this is another thing that I think they missed the mark on. As we were kind of mentioning earlier with the pacing, having Yoda show up as the last scene does nothing for this story. The story has been told. The show is over.
Oh yeah, it's not about the story, I don't think.
To have her talk with May and say, I need you to help me find someone. And then she goes in and she says, Master, I'm sorry, but I have something I have to report. And then we see it's Yoda. That contributes nothing.
And I don't think it's supposed to. I mean, I think, like you said, it's a fan service moment. That was for the warm and fuzzy.
Now, the warm and fuzzies, okay. It feels like they wrote this show and they already have season 2. They just ain't told nobody. They've already been confirmed for season 2.
Absolutely. They are leading into whether they get it or not, because so many people hate the show. They had to build a second
season. And don't get me wrong, I completely understand not writing yourself into a corner, not closing it off and shutting out doors. You don't want it to be a finale so finite that no one else can that you can't do anything. Totally get all of that. It took 7 episodes. Technically, it took 7.5 episodes to finally find out what the damn secret is.
Right. That's the
And
issue that I had, even though they they made me want to come back for each episode, even though they weren't telling me anything.
right.
You know, they weren't. They
Oh,
Soul would
that's
get
just
right
a
up to it like 3 times. He's like, "No, and
that's
something
just a
happened,
TV
and
that's
here's
a
what happened," and then fade to, and that was frustrating.
that's a trope that happens in like movies and TV shows all the time that just
Right.
irritates the piss out of me.
Exactly.
And I get that, like, in some cases, you can't end the movie or the TV show in 30 minutes by just having the people have the conversation. Because if they just have the conversation, none of the other shenanigans would take place.
Right.
I get that. And it's a plot device, but it's such an irritating plot device.
It is. It very much
Because
is.
as a actual human who lives an actual life, that does not happen that way. If I got
Right.
something to tell you, you gonna listen to this thing I gotta say. There is no, like, if I'm like, if I will tell you something, just hold on 1 second. Hello? Yeah, hey, I gotta take this, and walk off. Okay, we'll talk about it later. Hey, get your ass back over here. I was talking. Like, that's real life. TV is like, okay, well, I guess it can wait. We'll talk later. I mean, I can literally think of these exact moments in my adventures with Superman right now. I can think of the number of times that's happened in the TV show The Boys. Hell, I can think of I can't think of the number of lives that would have been saved in Game of Thrones if somebody had just been like, actually, you know what? Let me tell you this because it's important. It's just such a tropey thing, and it's just irritating. And I need people to get away from that. It's like, I have something important I have to tell you. It can wait. No, no, no. A secret
Yeah.
like that cannot. 16 now.
When you have to have 8 episodes, it's gonna have to wait, unfortunately.
So here's the thing. I absolutely understand that May had to get Soul to confess. And of course, OSHA had to be right there in time to only hear the confession.
Right.
None of the stuff leading up to that moment. So it doesn't matter what he has to say because everything that you've been trying to tell me, everything that we've been building up to is wiped away by you killing my feelings. People get up in their feelings. And when I have new information, maybe I have new feelings. If I have information, I wasn't ever really that angry with you, but now you the reason? Okay. And anybody that wants to have a problem with that or anything like that, I'm just going to remember that y'all was all Team Iron Man when Civil War happened and wasn't nobody on Cap's side because Cap knew and he tell him and that was his best friend. But they ain't got the kind of time that he got with Bucky. So I was Team Cap all day, every day, and was like, I get it. Yes, my homie did some bad stuff, but he wasn't right. It wasn't like he did it. He was brainwashed at the time. You clearly see the results of what happened. Like, the man is uncontrollable when he's brainwashed. I will fight you toe to toe with a shield and a suit, and like, you can barely handle me. I was struggling with him. Clearly, it's an issue. But, it's like, did you know? Yeah, I knew. And then it was perfectly okay for Iron Man to just turn on Cap. What? So we just feelings are obviously a very valid thing for people to have. And surprisingly, Jedi can't have feelings. And so when Jedi start having feelings, because I swear to God, Soul was about to say he loved her at one point.
Oh
You know what I'm
yeah.
saying? And
Yes.
and it wasn't on, and it was funny because Soul wasn't on that creepy, like, I'm in love with you. It was like
Right.
that protective, you my
It was
daughter kind of love.
paternal. Right. It was
Right, right.
purely paternal. It wasn't
And
gross at all.
that was a thing. And so, it was like I could see from both perspectives how her hurt, her betrayal would push her to the dark side. This whole time, she's been thinking that she was not able to handle this thing, but it turns out she was never taught how to handle this thing because I will say he was like extremely dismissive of it every time they would talk. And like if you go back and you watch those first couple episodes, whatnot, And she was like, maybe I just wasn't a good student. He's like, or maybe I wasn't a good teacher. And it was like, okay, they had a little moment. But when she was like, I have to get her for what she's done. He's like, you're not talking about justice. What you want is revenge. And she's like, and you see how every time she talks, like every time he talks to her, like she listens and she responds, and she probably could have flourished under him. He should have just been honest. And I get the part where he was saying, like, without the other twin, there would have been no proof. But didn't they have two different blood samples? But I guess it would just look like they took her blood sample twice.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I had to work that out of my head. Because I was like, if you have like, but then I guess like, and I'm wondering if you have actual, like, if you have twins, and because you know what it's like, I'm thinking back to like health class. So you have where two eggs get fertilized at the same time. You have where one egg splits after being fertilized, and you have two embryos. You know what I'm saying? Like those two grow and different things like that. So you have two different things. In this case, she would have been where one person was created and then turned into two people.
Mm-hmm.
So she was an exact duplicate of herself. So I imagine
and that's the main thing that made me mad at the end. So the big reveal is Osha and May, you're not twins, you're the same person. That's not possible. There are two people standing there looking at each other. And I get what you're saying, that they're not twins in the traditional sense of an egg and a sperm and then being fertilized and then splitting and they're identical twins, but they just can't be the same person. And that just preoccupied me for the rest of the show. Identical twins have the same DNA, but they're not the same person. Clones have the same DNA, but they're not the same person. So you going for 8 episodes, and finally the big reveal is you're not twins, you're the same person, and then you just drop it, and everything just goes on. And I'm like, what the fuck? That's not possible. What do you mean?
Now I will say, okay, and maybe I can help with this. Maybe it'll make it more confusing. Hopefully not. The whole idea was that so Torben did make a comment when they were looking at the blood samples, and he was saying that even identical twins would have, basically he was saying even identical twins would have different whatever count. You know what I'm saying? Like there was something he referred to it, even that would be different, that they weren't twins, they were the same person. Now, because there is no father, and he realized that they used the virgins to create them, or that the coven used the virgins to create the twins, the Force has created life. The amount of midichlorian manipulation required to create a person is not something the Jedi are familiar with. That was his whole reason for wanting to study. I genuinely believe he would have been satisfied with just taking Osha with them. If it had worked out in a perfect world situation, Osha would have left, gone with Soul. She would have become one of the greatest Jedi ever. And she'd be like ridiculously powerful with the Force, because she would have had, like, she had the Force at first, and it was like her connection to it just weakened because she didn't continue to use it, that sort of thing. But we saw that when she used her emotional connection to the Force, she had Khmer like stuck. Right now, he would have wanted to take the two people, Osha and May, before the council and say, hey, look, here's a blood sample. Watch. Same person. Explain. And they would have been like, oh my, this is wonderful. So tell me, like, how do you feel? What did you have for breakfast today? Are you hot? Are you cold? What do you see? They would have like gone in and studied and researched, and possibly, hopefully, like, I don't think they would have gone to that extent. They probably would have dissected. And keep in mind that Yoda's there, and Yoda seems to be really impressed with younglings and whatnot. So I doubt he would have let anything bad happen. But it is the idea that even if they were identical twins, there would have been, like, the reason they did the blood sample and whatnot, there would have been something on that blood sample that still recognizes the difference between this person and that person. And because that thing ended up coming up the same, that was the issue. Because if I'm not mistaken, like, even with identical twins. We would call it the soul, essentially, like, their personality or whatever. They can be two versions of the same body, carbon copy. Hell, they could even have the same fingerprints, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when you talk with them, this one felt one way, that one feels another way. They are different beings.
Mm-hmm.
And I kept looking to see if there was some sort of connection when May and Osha are in proximity to one another. Is there like a major difference between them? Did they have like the Hancock thing where the closer they were, the weaker they got, or the stronger they, just something to see. So in order to be strong, they had to be far apart. I was looking for some sort of connection like that just to see if it existed. I didn't catch anything specifically. But having two people who are the same person, I think the plan was for Mother Anasay to possess one of those bodies.
Mm-hmm.
Because that was, it's like when you hear these little moments in the conversation that, like, these little nuggets they drop here and there, and then they never go anywhere, but you remember them. When they were talking with May, and she was like, how are you all going to lead the coven, and da 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 da, and she was like, I don't know. Can I go now? You know what I'm saying? It was like, thank you so much for telling me that you da 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 da. And so it was like, wait, so how are the girls going to lead coven? That makes no sense. And then, of course, like I said, we saw May coming out, and Mother Anasay did the whole, like, Dracula turn into Mist thing.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, was she about to take over? Because the next time we saw that, Kalnaka was fighting.
Right.
And so, and that did raise a question, what happened to Mother Coral? Because if Mother Coral was the one who used her vapor form to possess Kalnaka, and the sisters were doing the little chant circle to keep the possession,
Mm-hmm.
we saw the sisters pass out. Was Mother Coral trapped in Kalnaka's mind? Is that why he went and put himself in the forest and started drawing on the wall? Couldn't get Mother Coral out of his head? So, stuff like that. You start dropping those kind of seeds. And of course, when someone's going to go and decide to do a review of your TV show, they got a lot of questions that still ain't answered. And so, of course, it's like, why would you put that in there if you wasn't going to, you waiting for season 2 on that? Well, what if you don't get season 2? Then I'm going to have that question stuck in my head.
Exactly.
That's not fair. Don't do that.
And you end up having to watch the season like 10 times to get all the nuances, because now it looks like I need to go back and watch both of the episodes on the witch planet.
See, and that was another thing. When I kind of look at where they missed the mark, and we discussed this at one point when I was talking about, the way we consume media these days is a little bit different. And this seems like the kind of show, now that it's completed, I plan on going back and just binging the whole thing, skipping the recaps and just going scene to scene to scene to scene to scene, because I would want to do the math and see like what the total runtime is. I feel like it's only about 3.5 hours, which is a long movie. And when you look at some of the cuts and the breaks where they stop this episode and where they start this episode, this honestly feels like a movie they just cut up and made into episodes for a TV show. And so, of course, it's kind of like, was this a movie? And was somebody like, there's no way we could present this as a movie and call it Star Wars? We will get murdered. And that is no. We're not trying to, Disney is not going to let us play with their money like that. But I like what you have. This is absolutely a story that needs to be told. Make it a TV show. Don't change anything. Make it a TV show. Because I think if we had had a little less time between this scene and that scene, we wouldn't have had a week to mill over. How is this? How is that? When did the, why? You know what I'm saying? And it's like we would have been more in the moment and more in the scene, and things would have progressed a little bit different. So I think the way it was presented, not in terms of story, not in terms of content, but literally just the different run times, because there wasn't a certain amount of consistency there, it feels like this was not the intended format, because every other version or every other show that, and I would have to go back and like double check and do the math on this, but like I want to say, and granted, Marvel and Star Wars, two entirely different IPs, so it may not be fair to make the comparison. They're both owned by Disney, so somebody at Disney got to sign off on all of this stuff because it's all on. If it's Disney Plus and it's streaming, it's got to go through checks and balances and gets up to a person eventually who signs off on it. But when you have planned shows like this, you typically have like if it had been 8 1-hour episodes, imagine how much more we would have been able to get with 8 1-hour episodes.
Yeah, but I don't know that they had that much.
Oh no, they absolutely did, because something else that they, believe it or not, got right. I really liked that senator who came in and was talking with Venestra, because he got like right in her face, and he was a character who could justifiably make you look at the Jedi a little different.
The black guy.
David Herwu. Jeff called him Senator Martian Manhunter because he was Martian Manhunter on Supergirl.
Senator Martian Manhunter.
But yeah, I mean, but just like in the little bit of time he was on screen, that was something that would have aided in the conflict with the Senate and showing how the Jedi and the Senate are interacting with one another. And the Jedi, and let's take a line from Revenge of the Sith, where Palpatine says, that's the problem with power. Once you have it, you're afraid to lose it, even the Jedi. You know what I'm saying? And here it is now, this, the High Republic is the best time for the Jedi. It's the height of, I mean, my girl has on like gold ceremonial robes, and they literally like stand around and do nothing because they're Jedi and they don't have to. Just the presence of a Jedi can shift the course of whatever, because it's the Jedi. You know what I'm saying? And yeah, this is like the best of the best of the best because they're Jedi. But we see that like they don't like anybody else using the Force. You don't get to, if the Force is a part of, like, every time you hear Jedi talk about the Force, they're like, the Force surrounds us, it binds us, it penetrates us, it's in everything. But you saying only y'all can use it.
Right, you gotta be a Jedi to use it. And anybody else who uses it is breaking the law.
What would the Force have to say about that?
Right.
Like, did the Force
was here before the Jedi were here.
So clearly, if the Force is all about balance, then why do you feel the need to like reduce the numbers of the bad side? Like, you don't get to make that call. The Force seeks balance on its own. So, all right, y'all are high and mighty, got something for that. Force sound a lot like karma, if you ask me. But no, I think Senator Martian Manhunter, just the dynamic between him and Venestra, it gave a very credible standpoint to why an oversight committee is needed. And it makes an argument that is hard to just gloss over, because you can physically see what Venestra is doing. They don't want to be controlled by a governing body. They don't want to be a part of politics. And politics is just like, yeah, we're politicians. We want to control stuff. And you're out here doing your own thing. I don't like it. You know what I'm saying? And otherwise, he gave no reason to pose a threat. And he was, just perfectly waspy. And he was like, hopefully you find your convict by then. I wish you luck. Oh, what is it you all say? May the Force be with. Like, damn, how do you say that and be condescending?
Right.
May the Force be with you. Like, bruh.
Interesting.
So I think just having, giving him a little bit more screen time would have done well. The resolution between Yord and Osha, like, obviously they had something.
Yeah.
They had something. And because my girl, like, at no point did I see Osha have a reaction to nothing till she saw him. Yord. Oh, like, you gonna act like you don't know me now? Like, you know what I'm saying? And that's right. Was that not the vibe? Because he was just like, and then the other Jedi, she's like, yeah, so you're wanted for some crimes, da da da. She's like, Yord, who's this?
Right. Since you're obviously a little preoccupied.
Right, like, who is this? What is this all about? And then, of course, he's like, well, We have to take you in. You're a wanted criminal.
You're still looking good though.
Right. You know what I'm saying? So it was like, obviously something was happening there. And that could have taken up 20 minutes. Like, just have them sit down, if nothing else. And I tell you the exact time that it could have happened, and it would have made sense, and it would have fit, and it wouldn't have been weird. It wouldn't have felt forced. When she slipped off to go see, after she was following Child May, and comes in, discovers the dead body. And I thought it was crazy. Like, she looks right up at the skyline, of course, because it's like, now it's like, oh yeah, she would know what May would know. Got it. So she looks right up at the skyline, and then the people walk in, and she's like, this is not what it looks like. I didn't do it. And then he comes around the corner. Yeah, she didn't do it. I've been watching her the whole time. And so, of course, like, now he can truly say, like, okay, you didn't murder. You're saying there's another person that looks just like you that didn't nobody know about except you. You thought she was dead, so it would make sense that you wouldn't really talk about her. Okay. All this fits together. When they were on the lookout, they could have like been on the comms talking to one another and whatnot, and she would have been like, and then that would have been perfect time for Jackie to intervene and be like, guys, what part of radio silence don't you get? You know what I'm saying? And it could have been like a great little like young adult coming of age moment, some Beverly, like, what would we call it? Tatooine 90210 kind of stuff happening right there. It would have been great. And I think that dynamic between those characters, and I hate that Yorn and Jackie are gone, because I like them as characters. And I think
that's why it was so surprising when we did lose them. But that whole scene with Torben's body was another one of those annoying little
cliches, TV tropes
that they use all the time. So Osha comes in and she sees the body and she runs over to see if he's actually dead. And I'm like, okay, you come into a room with a dead body, you gonna run right over and start touching it? Why don't you just stay where you are and go, somebody needs to come check this out?
Yell
but
out,
no,
help.
You run right over and you put fingerprints on them and you want to, check them for pulses and stuff. And then they come running in and you are standing over a dead body.
Yeah. Not a good look. Not a good look at all. And like you said, it's just another one of those tropey things that just happens in TV shows and such. It's like, oh, they got to do better.
Yes, to be original, people.
So that would be, and I would probably, anything that's tropey automatically goes into something where they kind of miss the mark. Was there anything else in particular that stood out for you? I would say my overall theme is a lot of stuff was written as if they've already been guaranteed a season 2. And because they haven't been guaranteed a season 2, I think they should have, for the most part, they did a good job of wrapping everything up, tying up all the loose ends, and leaving the right kind of pathways for the future. But it also felt very like we've already been greenlit for season 2. So here's what you can look forward to next season. And I don't do that. Like,
I
don't
didn't
play.
Have they though? I mean, is it like
nothing? Nothing is out regarding a season 2.
Because I didn't really get that. I kind of course, you get here's where a season 2 could pick up.
Right.
I didn't really get, we got season 2 in the bag already.
I feel like they were having the Plagueis reveal in the season finale, having the Yoda reveal season finale. It felt like, you know what? Those would have been great things to open up season 2 with. And it's one of those things, like, just like I was saying, there was absolutely no reason to include Yoda because it did nothing for the story. The fan service moment to be like, oh, look, there's something I know from Star Wars. I get that, because you ask somebody, name 5 things from Star Wars. Luke Skywalker, Darth Vader, Millennium Falcon, Yoda, lightsaber. You know what I'm saying? Like, boom. And if we did top 5 answer on the board, survey says Yoda go make the board. So I get that. It is absolutely a Star Wars thing. It contributed nothing. It did not benefit us other than being able to go like, and it would have been a really good drop casually for season 2 Ooh,
But I feel
because
like it was a good little drop. I feel like it was a good reward for those of us who hung in there and, who are
okay,
all about the warm and fuzzies. We got our little Yoda sighting at the end,
okay.
but they really did tie everything up with a nice little bow on it.
I
you
thought they did a
know,
fantastic job with
OSHA
that.
and May kind of switched places, and that could be the end of it. Now we got a little bit of vagary that they could pick up a season two with, but I feel like if they don't get a season two, okay. Um,
Yeah, yeah. I
but
definitely think that it's closed. They tied up all the loose ends in such a way that if we only have season one, the finale closed it like they ended the show well enough that if it's only 8 episodes, start, middle, end, where you can leave the rest to the imagination,
mhm,
because if nothing else, we know it has to end up here. We will never hear OSHA's name again in canon, and that'll be fine.
right,
Eventually, May and Vanestra pass on. This could also be an example of maybe this was the first time someone who was too old to take the test took the test, which is why Yoda was like, not this kid. You know what? I seen this before, dog. It's not gonna go good. I'm trying to tell y'all. I've seen this.
right. That's why it's
I
all about the
I
young
remember
ones.
when we did this before. You know what I'm saying? And so it's
Mm.
like it starts to make a little bit more sense why he was just like, nope, wait. He ain't got no daddy. Force baby, midichlorian count high? Nope, nope. Don't want none of that.
Now, if nothing else, I would like to get into why Finestra lied so eloquently about how the whole, landing party or whatever ended up dead. Because when she went into that, and I was like, well, you green heifer, you know, blaming everything on Soul, because I still have a soft spot for Soul because
Right.
probably because he was so human. But
Yeah.
I didn't expect her to wrap it up like that and pin it all on Soul. Um, so that would be something that I would be interested in seeing if they revisit that at all in a season two. But otherwise, I think just about the only thing that they left hanging was the fact that she knows what's his name.
Oh, she knows Dark Tethys, Kamir.
Yeah.
When we saw him in the cave and he took his shirt off and he had like the marks on his back, and then
Hmm.
we saw her bring out her lightsaber and it turns into a whip. I'm gonna say this carefully. I've watched enough movies that I didn't want to watch in my lifetime to recognize what that looked like and where that came from.
You did. I did.
And
I didn't get that.
but now that I've said that, you put
Hmm.
it together immediately. So
Hmm.
I was like, because here's the thing: the only question that remains with that is how do you manage to stop it and not have it go all the way through? But then they land on the planet. She does like a force reach, and you see Kamir. He's like, oh, immediately
Right.
puts on the helmet, and she's like,
Hmm.
you're alive. She thought it did go all the way through, or maybe it actually did go all the way through, and he figured out a way because we saw him force heal OSHA.
Hmm.
Maybe he learned force healing from whoever healed him. And maybe the person that healed him is the old man in the cave or the old being in the cave. And I'm only assuming old because they tried to show that little decrepit hand
Right.
looking like Crypt Keeper coming out. And so it was just like, if that's the case, then we have our Darth Plagueis reveal. That means Darth Plagueis, given how freely Soul left, not Soul, but given how freely Kamir left with the intention of training OSHA and him saying, you might call me a Sith, as opposed to owning up to him being a Sith, him
Hmm.
saying he wanted someone to train, he wanted a student. Ooh, something just hit. Soul and Kamir are two versions of the same.
Okay.
When Kamir was asked what he wanted, he said he wanted to be free.
Hmm.
So asked him, like, what are you? He's like, you might call me Jedi, like you might call me a Sith. He doesn't actually
Right.
claim to be a Sith. He just says, you would call me a Sith. because he doesn't follow the path and the guidings and the teachings of the Jedi any longer. He obviously has connection to the Force and former training. Now that we're putting that connection, he at least knows Venestra. So, given that he knows all of the ways of the Jedi and what they believe and what they say, former Padawan. Oh no, she does confirm it because she says a former pupil of hers.
Yeah, she did say that.
Okay, so we know for a fact that he's had Jedi training. So you take his Jedi training. He obviously has lived for a very long time. We see some brutal marks on his back, so it looks like he may have gone like Ben Solo and Luke Skywalker way. You kill your Padawan in the sleep kind of thing. But he wanted an apprentice.
Right. He wanted a second.
Soul wanted an apprentice. Soul did not appeal to the emotions that she needed to work through. Kamir did. She followed Kamir's path. She tried to follow Soul's path.
But she couldn't get past the emotions or the lack of emotion that they wanted her to have.
And then in comparison, May, who was the cold-blooded killer, wouldn't kill the dude who was holding his kid after she straight murdered, but then won't. You know what I'm saying? It's like, why would you leave somebody alive who could ID? That don't make sense. But then as you go through the episode, you begin to realize, like, okay, she's not a complete bitch. You know what I'm saying? Like, she's just not completely cold-blooded. Right. There's some rhyme and reason to what she does.
She's just after the ones, the certain ones.
Now, if you look at the arguments and the conversations, the best battles had been between Soul and Kamir. They seemed pretty evenly matched, going toe for toe, back and forth, boom, 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 boom. Both times, Soul was able to best Kamir. The first time, Soul looked like he was ready to actually take him out. They got interrupted. He was able to get away. The second time, Kamir was like, you know what? We're not going to play with this anymore. Takes his helmet off, turns to face him see what you got. Go do it then. Do it. Do it. Do it. Do it. You know what I'm saying? Was in his face. And he was sitting there holding the lightsaber, and you could see in Soul's eyes, he was about to cut that man down.
Right. He wanted to.
And he was battling his own demons. He was having a struggle with the dark side in that moment, because the more he got upset, the better he started fighting, kind of thing. And it was
right.
And that's
he was going outside of that Jedi mentality, though, because when they got face to face right now, and they're struggling, I'm sitting there, of course, I'm talking to the TV. Jedi does not kill the unarmed.
Right. And see, and that was the thing. He, when he had he was holding the lightsaber down, bringing it close, and the sparks were shooting off for the helmet. I was like, bruh, you do know if it touches that helmet, it's about to cut out, right? Y'all gonna have to, if it came down to throw hands, Soul was about to put the paws on. We saw that. This is with everything in the show being about the duality, right? Soul and Kamir are the duality of the master. Two versions of what a master can look. Interesting that they're now that I'm really thinking about that's a very unique dynamic. I'm gonna put that up in things they got right. I'm gonna slap that on with things they got right. But yeah, it was actually crazy the way. Well, when Venestra pinned everything on Soul, I think that was something that came to her from the conversation with the senator, because she knew she had to present something.
Right.
Because he was well, we have this trial coming up, and I hope you have everything, figured out by then. Good luck. Or what do you people say? May the force be with you. That, bro, was so condescending. I love it. But you know what I'm saying? Having that conversation kind of let her know that she's got to do something, show something, say something. So, you know what? Because it almost came out exactly the way he was saying. Well, what happens if one of you just snaps? And then she's like, well, it turns out one of us just snapped. But don't worry, it was a single incident. We handled it discreetly, kept it, it's no big deal. Nothing to worry about. We got it. It's an in-house matter. No reason for Senate to be worried. And it's not the kind of thing that happens very often. I would still be but let me make sure I got this right. You're talking about an event that took place 16 years. I mean, so for 16 years, he been just like ducking and dodging in the shadows, doing what he wanted to do. Y'all just caught on to it, and the
Right.
result of it was all these dead Jedi, and that's acceptable loss for you.
Right. Do you
Like,
think that's okay? Okay.
I mean, because the Jedi, they're just gonna go out, test a few more kids, find out who got some Force powers, and have more Jedi's, because
Well,
that's what they do.
snatch them up young so you can
Right,
train them up.
just go knock on some doors. Hey, does your kid have the Force? Come with me. We have a special school for them to go to. No, you can't come, and you don't have a mother and father anymore. You just have the Force.
Right. You can't come and you can never see them again. Well, with the price of groceries these days.
Not them buying kids. Oh, I got no choice but to look at the Jedi in a different light now, and I love it. It's so fascinating because it really does show that there is a gray area in there, and it kind of makes you like at least see the potential for situations like that. Because what happens if somebody has Force powers but doesn't want to be a Jedi? Are they mind wiped to forget that they even have that ability? Like, are they permitted? Like, okay, I tell you what, you don't want to be a Jedi. That's cool. I wouldn't be going around letting people know that I have the Force. If I were you, it's probably not safe for you out here.
Right.
If you come to Coruscant, gotcha. If you out here on your own, just saying. A lot of weird things happen out here on Tatooine. Force users who aren't Jedi. Just saying, want a house to catch on fire. It's interesting, and it's a thought of like, what do they do in those situations? I think those two kind of work together though. So that's kind of our 4 and 5. Well, that's kind of 3 and 4 definitely. Feelings on the ending and the finale, and thoughts on a season 2. We can kind of mix that up. So, were there any major highlights? What were some of the major highlights, if you had any? For me, I'm going to say the lightsaber battles. Just from the season.
Series.
Yeah. What were any highlights you may have had?
See, I'm not as into the whole fight choreography, lightsaber battles thing.
Right.
But you kind of mentioned earlier, I like the way they consistently do like the lovable droid type thing.
Yeah.
And I think they do very well, like introducing the new species or whatever. And it's not for them, it's nothing new, because all these people come from all these different places all over the galaxy. So it's no big deal there. But I mean, just all of the different, like the people who look so different. And, they might have the horns around here or the big kind of flesh, whatever. I love that. It's always really seamless. They might have introduced a couple more people who look like you've never seen before, and it's just nothing new. And once again, I do love the lovable droids, but I have a little bit of a problem with how I kind of wanted Pip to have some loyalty to Osha, and like when May found his head and put him back together, he kind of is helping May now. I'm like, do you have no loyalty?
And I will say in that particular case, when she gets him put back together, you do see a moment where he turns on, his eyes are blue, and she's kind of like arguing with it for a moment.
Mm-hmm.
And then it turns off, and when it turns back on, the eyes are red.
Yeah.
That factory reset.
Like,
and she even says, like, like the factory reset. So it would be the equivalent of C-3PO having his memory wiped.
Mm-hmm.
But R2-D2 has never had his memory. So, of course, he remembers Luke and knows where Luke is and all this, that, you know what I'm saying? Whereas C-3PO is like, whoever is controlling me right now is controlling me because that's how it works. I'm a protocol droid and I do what I'm told. In this case, Pip was I won't say just a droid. Obviously, it was Osha's friend.
Right.
And initially, he did have that loyalty to her.
Mm-hmm.
But once he was reset, the eyes turned red. So he was no longer like independently thinking or able to control his own functionality. And that's what we were seeing. And I thought it was pretty funny when they were fighting one another, when Osha and May were fighting. She's like, Pip. And you know, like
Mhm.
squirts a little thing in her eyes, and she's like,
Mhm.
she's shocked. So I know exactly what you're talking about. I thought that was kind of funny, but
And
yeah,
I just
that
love
was
the way they met. Of course, we're not supposed to understand it because it's a series of beeps and different sounds and stuff. But I love the way they make it so certain things we do understand from the droids. So
right.
somebody might ask a droid a question, and he makes the two little beep sounds that sound like or something like that, so we understand what they're saying as well too. I love how they do that throughout,
Yeah.
kind of humanizing the droids.
So and I do like you said, the two beeps. They always find some way to kind of like don't say that. You know what I'm saying? It'll be like
Hmm.
some response, and then they say something, and then they're like, do, 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 do. And C3PO and R2 are the best for that. Oh my, R2, how dare you can't say that about my stuff.
Absolutely,
You
yeah.
know, it's like you can fill in the gaps yourself. And so it is always really cute. And that's why I think like having the cute little whatever, you know what I'm saying? It'd be a droid, it'd be a Wookiee, an Ewok, or you know what I'm saying? They always have like some little thing that's just cute and it's fun. You know, it's like Jim Henson's puppets and all those creatures have always been a part of Star Wars. So it's always nice to have something new, be it a droid or some little alien creature showing up and whatnot. I'm with you there. I always like that. Were there any other like standout highlighted items?
I feel like they did a good job, consistently, like, keeping me wanting to come back. So,
Yeah,
giving me just enough, even though you mentioned that it was kind of like probably could have been a movie. The
right.
way they did cut it, they kept me looking forward to the next. So
Mm,
they did a good job of chopping it up, I believe, such that I was still interested in coming back. I think the momentum kind of fell a little bit in that last episode because and it was, I checked, it had the longest runtime, just by like a minute or two. But
right.
there was kind of some lulls in there for me, but it picked back up. But I definitely think they the way they chopped it up kept me interested.
Yeah, yeah. I would agree with all of that. I noticed those breaks where they put them seemed very intentional. And the only time it threw me off was I think it was episode 5. The episode where Osha puts the helmet on.
Hmm.
There was like 2 seconds of black screen between what I thought was the end of the episode. 2 seconds of black screen, and then boom, we go to Osha in the cave, and she's holding the helmet in her hands, and then she puts it on, and we got the Darth Vader breathing inside the helmet. You know
Hmm.
and again, cute little tie-in. That was
Right.
that was one of those like, hey, I know what that is, and so it was a very good tie-in. But I literally thought the episode was going to end 2 seconds before. And if I was one of those like remote jockeys, I would have missed it.
Right. Right.
I would have missed it. And so that was just one of those things that like the cuts, all the other cuts they were good, they were right. They were really strong on the cliffhanger aspect of it.
Hmm.
They had me pissed off on one episode, the way it ended. I was like, and I want to say it was episode 3 when he first showed up and he was like force push and then like fade to black. I'm like, you can't.
Right. No.
And then the next episode, that might have been was that the end of 2? I know the next episode we like just so yeah, the cuts were good and they did make you come back. So I would agree that was obviously keep you invested.
But
Um,
the one you're talking about, that setup was kind
yeah,
you get to the point where you think it's over. You got that little, people who aren't familiar with Marvel movies would be, gathering up and getting up, get up again, and you got to turn around and, watch it from the aisle because it's not over.
and I got to do the math on it now because it confirms it even more. What if this was one of those movies a single movie, but part one and part two. The close of part one and part one's post-credit scene. The rest of the episodes and their post-credit scene would have been her
Was
going,
Yoda.
we might be onto something. We might be onto something.
Perfect post-credit
It
scene.
makes a lot of, and you know what? Now, I got to take back my statement. If this had been a movie and that ending of part two, it is a perfect addition. And that is a way to tie it back to the canonized story so that no
Absolutely.
matter what else happens,
Mm-hmm.
if we never hear from Osha or May or Vanestra again, we can take this story way back here
Mm-hmm.
and tie it to the existing Star Wars.
Yeah.
It now actually has a lot of weight for that camp, but only if you look at it from a certain point of view. And that's just my new context for Star Wars. Star Wars has been so black and white for so long. It's nice to have some new writers, especially and as Jeff would say, damn it, he's converting me again. These writers who come in with the sole intention of what Jeff believes is just to piss off the Star Wars fan. But in a sense, they do kind of shake up the fan base. And if nothing else, you know what? It creates a little bit of discourse. And as a result, like if you continue to get the same thing over and over and over, that will get stale, boring, and old. If you don't challenge the status quo, if you don't try new things, if you don't get out there and experiment, you're never going to know what's going to work and what's not going to work, and you'll never have an opportunity to improve. Because if we all just sit around and continue to act like the original trilogy is the best three movies they've ever made ever, no. If people aren't willing to admit how much nostalgia plays a part in their enjoyment of Star Wars, because let's face it, in comparison, the lightsaber battles are all shit now. Not even bad, just they're shit.
Well, it was
they were
40 years
great.
ago.
I was about to say they were great for the time, because if you go back and you watch your Errol Flynn, you know what I'm saying? Like that's how they did it back then, and it was great. And I contribute everything to Keanu Reeves in The Matrix. When we saw Surfer Dude, you know, from Bill and Ted doing kung fu and kicking Morpheus, is that like that raised the level of expectation of what you could do in a movie. And if you look at any action film that came out after the Matrix, everybody can kick ass now. That's why we got Atomic Blonde. That's why we got Haywire. That's why we got Jason Bourne. That's why we got John Wick. You know what I'm saying? Because it became a thing. That's why we got Nobody. That's how we got Kingsman. Colin Firth, action hero. What? Nobody was expecting that. And so when you look at these lightsaber battles that we're getting now, and I remember thinking when I saw episode 2 it was episode 3 watching Revenge of the Sith, when Anakin comes in and he's just like dual wielding lightsabers and taking on Darth Sidious and Count Dooku when they're fighting, and boom, 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 boom. My man was like, I've gotten much better since the last time we met. Proceeded to beat the brakes off Dooku like it was nothing. And that was such a beautiful choreographed fight. And then, of course, having Obi-Wan and Anakin fight at the end was like, that became the epitome of what a lightsaber battle could be. And they have challenged that in one episode. The finale episode was enough to challenge them. Not on the same grand scale, but just in terms of like skill, movement, capability. We could rank it and it would be up there. I would say for me, one of the highlights, and this is my biggest highlight for the series. There's a lot of things individually that I like. Of course, you know, lightsaber battles, that's just going to stick out in my head. But for the show as a whole, the seduction of the dark side, and RG is going to hate this, so I can't wait to get his feelings on it. The seduction of the dark side becomes much more understandable when viewed through this lens of the Acolyte, because there's a lot of emotions involved. It's not just, I want to kill people. I'm the bad guy. It is, people have done me wrong, and now I have the power to not put up with that anymore.
Right. You don't have to like
You know what I'm saying? And it's like,
suppress your emotion.
bingo. And that's a big deal. And I'm gonna specifically point to two scenes. And Jeff and I talked about this when we did our show, so be sure to go check that episode out. Um, but watching Kamir legitimately seduce Osha, when we saw it the first time, it was a little weird. This is a little weird. Definitely gave some like abusing your position kind of groomer vibes. And then a little later on, you come to realize that there's a little bit more emotion involved. And the seduction is using the emotion. So you would want to make your apprentice fall in love with to do what you say and follow your lead, especially if they're more powerful than you.
Mm-hmm.
You got to have that Munchausen syndrome to keep her in check, because if she get mad again, then black eyes might stay black.
Mm-hmm.
And you probably don't want that as the master. So it makes sense. And another example is when the Jedi were on Bracken and they were in the Witch's Coven, and Torben was standing there, and then a few seconds later, like everyone's gone, and Mother Anastasia is walking around talking to him. Let me tell you something. Whatever she would have asked of me right then, I would have done. Okay? Let me tell you something. When Jodie Turner Smith asks you a question, the answer is yes. Okay? In that moment, and again, that was the scene that actually made me view the seduction side a little differently, because here she's talking to a Jedi. Granted, he's a Padawan at this point, or he's an apprentice or a pupil, but he's a capable enough pupil that she brought him
He's
with.
on this mission, yeah.
Right. You know what I'm saying? And so, and the next time they come around, he's like, I've stilled my mind. So he has the capability to like push her out, but he has his own desires. He doesn't want to be on this planet. He wants to go away. And she's just like, tell me what you want. Tell me, say it. And he's all like, I want to go back to Coruscant. You know what I'm saying? And he's like, and she's like, have it. And like, okay, I want to go to Coruscant. Hey, can I go to Coruscant, please? Like, you know what I'm saying? And it's like, what's this? And when that like when they get in your mind, like that never goes away. And that was something that like I hadn't really thought about it before, because we always hear about, the Jedi who, like that's the path to the dark side, and they're fighting against the dark side, and they have to not go down that path, and that, so it's like a constant struggle to do right. Sounds legit. I'm good with that. That's how heroes live, always struggling to do the right thing. Doing the wrong thing is supposed to be easier. That's the cheating way, and you get around that way. But these people who have had like that real touch of the dark side, they're never right after that.
Mm-hmm.
Torben meditated for 10 years and was like, no one will ever get in my head again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Matter of fact,
that's a violation. He was violated.
nobody will ever be in my personal space. Like you couldn't even get next to dude. You know what I'm saying? Kalnaka went out in the middle of nowhere to be
Off
by
the
himself,
grid.
and
Mm-hmm.
still had to draw the little symbols to get it out.
Mm-hmm.
Never. And that's why I was saying, like, kind of wonder, like, so what happened to Mother Coral? Ooh, she could still be in there.
Ooh.
So RG's gonna hate that the good guys can't be good, and why do we have to turn the villains into the hero? But in this case, I think it's acceptable because we've also turned the heroes into villains.
Mm.
So it's not just like we're trying to redeem the bad guys. No, we're not redeeming the bad guys, because my man killed all of them Jedi, didn't blink. There's no redeeming that part. But then we get to see like how you take someone like Osha, who wanted to be a Jedi, now understands that she has a connection to the Force and a path that allows her to just feel the way she feels, and she's stronger because of it. Hell yeah, let's do that. And because she knows that she doesn't know enough, she understands that she needs someone to train her, and it would make sense for her to go with the person who has clearly shown some capacity to deal in this side of the Force. It just makes too much fucking sense. And I have to give credit to the Acolyte for making me look at the Sith a different way, looking at the Jedi a different way, and just showing the seduction of the dark side. Like, Bravo. That is without a doubt the highlight of the season for me. That was what made this show just work. Was seeing that, and that came out so well in the last episode. And I just hate it for anybody that didn't get that same feeling, who sat through 8 episodes just hating it and couldn't enjoy that payoff at the end. Like, I really hope that a show comes out that's just for you and it's what you want, because I was very pleased. I was very pleased. And of course, like you said, there's moments where it dragged. It took too long. Maybe this show could have been 6 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
If we're not going to stretch it out properly and add the stuff that I feel would have given depth to a few things, then we need to cut some things out altogether. Don't make me care about Yord. Don't make me care about Jackie just to wipe them out 2 episodes later. Like,
Right.
don't do that. Ugh.
Yeah, that
Ugh.
was crazy.
Everything don't have to be Game of Thrones. Like, oh, didn't see that coming. Stop. Everybody got it. But I've enjoyed this immensely. I think I'm gonna do more one-on-one reviews of things so that we can deep dive a little bit. It's a lot easier with two of us. I will thank the others when they get their opportunity. I had a chance to speak with Jeff, had a chance to speak with you. I will schedule some time with RG because I cannot wait to talk to RG about it.
That's going to be interesting.
I will. You will be the first one to know when it posts. I will share it to you all first. But I get to tease him a little bit and just be like, what'd you say was going to happen? We'll pull that clip up and play it while we're talking. But this has been so much fun, Teresa. Thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for talking Star Wars with me, because I love to talk about Star Wars, and that is my jam. And this was all up in the stuff that I like about Star Wars, because it was space wizards and laser swords, and a lot of space magic taking place, and that's what I love. So this was a great show for me. Scale of 1 to 10, what would your final score be?
I'm gonna go 7. Definitely more than 5.
I 100%. I gave it a 6.9 out of 10. I'm right there with you. And truthfully, after we've hashed some things out, I will go right there with you. I will change my score to a 7. Because I was really upset about that Yoda moment. But now that I've kind of twisted around, I'm like, you know what? That is a perfect post-credit scene. That is a perfect post-credit scene. So it does make sense for it to be the absolute last thing you see, and it not take more than 10 seconds. So yeah. But see, but Mark, Disney doesn't do post-credit. So, but it would be cool for them to do a movie, part 1 and part 2, and have a post-credit. And yeah. And I think the reason that they probably would not have done a movie is so this would have been a hard sell for a movie. It would have cost a lot.
But didn't it cost a lot anyway?
It did cost a lot anyway. It costs a lot anyway. But I don't know if there is enough in the current landscape. I don't know if there's enough backing for this as a theatrical release.
Mm-hmm.
They kind of have to build off what they know. And right now we know Mandalorian. We don't know High Republic. We don't know that time period. We don't know that era. So there would be too many questions, which would have caused it to get the same kind of review bombing.
Right.
And
and
get into that part of it.
The female POC lead. Yeah.
So you protect yourself from all of that stuff. And then, Disney Plus, they put it on streaming. They could have still released it as a movie. Problem with that, if you release it in a theatrical form on the streaming service, in some cases, for something like this, if it was a Netflix thing and they did it, cool. Netflix releases their original content movies all the time. Star Wars is too big an IP to have an original movie and it not be theatrical. Because if you do a Disney Plus direct movie, all you're saying is that this wasn't good enough to do well in theaters. And people are going to see that. And whether it's true or not, that's going to be the assumption. So I think taking it, revising it, doing a little bit of editing and cutting it up to make it a series instead of a movie, Just that addition of the post credit scene has me looking at this thing at a whole new light now.
Right. And I feel like with the Disney connection, I feel like Marvel and Star Wars are cousins anyway.
Kevin
So
Feige walked over and said, "You know what you could do?
right.
Let me tell you. You know what the people love? You know what they love? Put a post credit scene in.
Right.
They go nuts for that shit. I'm telling you, put one in. Well, Star Wars has never had one, so be the first. Do it. Watch and see what happens. And it would have been, I think that would have been a perfect post credit scene. Yeah. All right. Well, Teresa, you broke the code. That's it. So I'm going to bring you in the writer's room when Jeff and I write our next Star Wars series.
All right.
Automatically, now you are in charge of all post credit scenes for our show, our shows and series. You let me know. You let me know what the things my wife is going to want to see that'll make her happy. That'll work out just fine. And I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. I love talking with you every time we get on here. I always love your input, your insight, and just the way you see things, being that it's usually different from me, and I like the fresh perspective, because if I just have more people who all like the same shit I like, I won't ever grow. And all of my look, you completely flipped me on this one thing that I was so passionate about, like that. It did nothing for the story. It did not help. It was not necessary. But it works if you do. There it is.
Right. It works if you look at it
from a
like
different
I
point
do.
of view. That's what Star Wars is. You just have to see things from a certain point of view. So I gotta, you know what? I gotta order that book. I've talked about that book way too much. I've just got a copy. I let somebody borrow mine and I haven't gotten it back. I don't even know who has it.
What book is that?
It's a book. It's called Star Wars from a Certain Point of View. So every time you hear me make that joke, it is literally like an inside joke in my head for Star Wars fans, because it is like a collection of short stories and small stories that happen around the galaxy. And it would be something like, so just thinking of a moment. Okay, these are not the droids you're looking for. Those two stormtroopers. Imagine a story where we find out that someone figured out that those were the two stormtroopers on duty when the droids were allowed to pass. That guy gets fired, and he now has to go and work in the Tatooine salt mines or whatever. And that's from a certain point of view.
Mm-hmm.
You don't think about all of these places that exist in the cracks of Star Wars. And this is one of those stories that really is in the cracks. If you go in the traditional standpoint, Jedi good, Sith bad, right always beats wrong, good always beats evil, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, this is a horrible show because it doesn't do that. It doesn't follow that formula.
It blows up everything you believed.
You know what I'm saying? And the funny thing is like they did such a good job in doing that without making the Jedi bad.
Right.
They were still good people who just chose actions that resulted in negative outcomes.
Right. And it wasn't even really, they did what they thought at the time, and it might not even have been all of them, but the one who was in charge, the one who was calling the shots at that moment, doing what he thought was right.
And the funny thing is, even then we can add to it and be like, rather than like sell her dude out and be like, you on your own, she was like, hey, squad up. I got you. I'm not going to let you go out like that because you're a good Jedi. And you know what? We've ruined this girl's life, killed her entire family. Mm-hmm. Her sister's dead. Her mother's dead. You wanted her? Okay. Raise her. Do right by her. And we see that he actually went to do that. And because when he first saw Osha again, just the joy on his face, like, girl, we're going to keep talking about this thing for another hour. All right.
I gotta go to bed.
This is season 1 spoiler review of Star Wars: The Acolyte. I've been your host, GrownAGeeks Sam. Joining me tonight was Teresa, the oldling. She is slowly becoming one of my favorite critics, and hopefully one of yours as well. We ask that you like and subscribe this video. You can click that QR code right there in the corner. That'll take you to everywhere you can find us on all our social media. We're here on YouTube. Of course, you can find us on Twitch, Instagram. Join our Facebook group where we have discussions like this all of the time. We thank you for having watched this episode. Be sure to tune in to our next one. I think I'm going to try to get through everybody in the weekly watch group. So we've got one video with me and Jeff. This is one with me and Teresa. Can't wait to talk with Brandy about it. Cannot wait to have this conversation with RG so he can tell me how horrible it was because they made the bad guys the heroes. And I got to see what his take is on that. But join us on the next one. But for tonight, we are out of here. Peace.